I'm back with another gear demo. We're going to compare these 4 highly regarded Univibe circuits, decide whether or not they're worth your time and money, and I'm going to talk trash about all of them at the end of this video. So let's go. Okay, so the preamble to today's discussion is that I love the Univibe. I think it's one of the coolest effects ever made. It's motion that it adds to the signal, the vibrato, the chorus. I just love it. It's a great sound. That said, I am so sick of Univibes. You see, recently I've decided to overhaul my pedal board. I've added some new pedals, a loop switcher, put it all on a new board. And the Univibe I've been using for the last 2.5 years has been this, the Sabbadius Funky Vibe. It's a recreation of a 1968 Honey Univibe, and a great sounding Univibe. But in the new pedal board configuration, it's not working. It's too big. I didn't have the space for it. That's poor planning on my part. But more importantly, it's introducing noise with my loop switcher. You see, this has an internal power transformer, and the internal power transformer is adding noise to some of my other pedals, which is a no-no, right? I had to get rid of it for that reason. But I love the tone of it, so I did not want to go back on the Univibe hunt again because I was really satisfied with this tonally. I want to tell you guys about 3 things to listen out for when deciding if the Univibe is right for you. 1, listen to the frequency response of the Univibe. Every Univibe imparts a certain EQ curve to your guitar signal when the Univibe is on or when the preamp is in the cancel position. The classic Univibe preamp tends to shave off some low frequencies and some upper frequencies, and it tends to play with the mid-range with a gentle boost. 2, does the modulation have a full range sweep? Are you able to hear the swooshiness in the upper mids and high frequencies and the throbbiness of the lower frequencies? 3, what does the waveform of the modulation sound like when it comes in and out? Is it more of a smooth sine wave of gradually coming in, or is it more of an abrupt on-off kind of square wave sound that you hear when the effect comes in and out? So aside from the enclosure size and power requirements, if you understand what you want in these 3 key tonal aspects, I think you can quickly find the Univibe that's best suited for your style of play. The Violet Vibe from R. Weaver Effects. Now this one's frequency response is probably the most neutral of all the ones we've tried today. The classic Univibe preamp tends to shave off some low frequencies and shave off some upper frequencies and give you a gentle bump in the upper mid-range. This one doesn't do that nearly as much, and that's what I like the most about it, I think. You could use any style of guitar with it, any pickup position, it's going to sound great. Now how does the sweep of the modulation sound on this one? I think this one has a good wide sweep. You have all the swooshiness in the upper frequencies and the throbbiness of the lower frequencies. Now, what does the waveform feel like when the effect is on? To me, it's a little bit more abrupt sounding, almost square, but not square. It's kind of a quick in and out. I think if you had the intensity past 3, it's not really usable, but on 3, it sounded perfect. Not a lot of wide range in that intensity, but you don't really need to play with that. You just get it to the good spot and leave it there. The con of this one, I would say, is the enclosure size. It's the biggest pedal, especially the tallest of all the ones that we tried today. So if you don't have the pedal board real estate, this probably isn't going to work for you. But if you can afford it, which again is another key point, this is probably the most affordable one of all the ones we tried today and arguably the best sounding one. So if you're in the market and you have the pedal board space, you can't go wrong with this one for a good modern sounding Univibe. The Vibe 1968 from Kingtone Effects. Now, the frequency response of this one out of the box is great. It's real modern sounding. I feel like it's going to work well with any amp, any guitar, any other pedals. It's real neutral sounding in the mid-range. You got a lot of low end and you got a lot of top end. And one of the cooler things about this is that there's an internal control that allows you to voice the characteristic of that preamp. You can leave it more modern sounding, or you can dial it into sound more vintage where you're shaving off those lower frequencies and upper frequencies. And to me, that's pretty cool. So if you like the idea of being able to tailor that to your own preference, you can do that with this one. You can't do that with the other one, so worth noting. The modulation on the Vibe 1968 is pretty good. The range of that sweep goes down to the lower mids, up to the upper mids. As far as how it sounds and compares to the other Vibes that we've tried out today, I think I prefer, personally, the sweep of some of the other ones a little bit more. And I would say if this one had maybe an extra 10% range on the lower end and higher end, that it would sound more on par with what we heard from the other Vibes. It's not bad sounding by any means. It's a really good sounding Univibe, but I just wish it had a little extra range in its sweep. As far as the characteristic of the waveform modulation, when the effect is coming in and out, it's pretty abrupt and sudden. It reminded me more of the Violet Vibe, whereas say the Tiny Vibe and Funky Vibe had a little bit smoother ramp in and out of the modulation effect while it was on. Something just worth noting, I noticed that like the Violet Vibe, you can see that we were using depth A. I had it at about 11 o'clock. If I got it much higher than that, to me it didn't sound as musical or usable. I feel like this Vibe, out of all the others, really requires that we talk about the feature set. You can see we essentially have 2 Univibes in one enclosure, each with its own rate and depth control, coarse vibrato switch. And in addition to that, you have a host of other tweakable features such as waveform symmetry, bulb bias. On the inside of the pedal, you can tweak the wet-dry ratio, you can tweak the volume, and you can tweak the preamp again. So if you're really into dialing in a Univibe and you want it to sound a very specific way, this may be the way to go simply because it offers the most flexibility. Sabbadius Custom Shop Funky Vibe 68. Now the frequency response of the Funky Vibe shaves off a lot of upper frequencies, some lower frequencies, and gives you a good push in the mid-range. Now this is an older Funky Vibe from 2020. I know that Nico is using new photocells in these, and if you have something like the Tiny Vibe or Funky Vibe made after November 2022, it's going to have the new photocells, and these new photocells give you a lot more upper range in the frequency response. You get more high frequencies. So if you have an older Funky Vibe, it's going to sound more like this, and if you have a newer one made after November 22, it'll sound more like the Tiny Vibe's frequency response. Now, how did the modulation sound on this one to me? I really like the sound of this modulation. It's got a wide range sweep up to the upper mids, I'd say, all the way down to the low frequencies. And if it had the upper range extension like the Tiny Vibe does, it would sound great. It sounds pretty good, and I've been using it for 2 years, and I've been happy with it. But having heard these other ones back to back, I think some of the other ones have a wider range sweep than this one. This one does something unique in the modulation that the other ones weren't doing. Now, I don't know if this is a calibration thing or a parts thing, but this one was doing kind of a double pulse thing that the other ones weren't doing. Now, what do I mean by double pulse? Double pulse is like when the lamp goes out and comes back on. This is the lamp that generates the modulation. When that light goes on and off, it creates a percussive effect in the low frequency, sort of like a thump, 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 thump. To me, it sounds sort of like somebody hitting a floor tom. Boom, 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 boom. This was the only one that was doing that double pulse thing really well. So something to note that this one was doing that was unique from the other ones. Now the waveform of the modulation as it comes in and out was a lot smoother and kind of sine wave-ish on this one, and I like that about this particular one. Things I don't like about this one is the attached AC cord. Not a fan of that. And the internal power transformer. You can't take this to another country and it work. You'll probably blow it up. And it's pretty noisy with some other pedals because it's AC powered. Also, the enclosure is pretty big. It's the second largest of the ones we tried out today. Not keen on that. The other cool thing about this particular one is that I ordered it from Nico myself. And you can see my name is on the back of it. That's super cool. The Tiny Vibe 68 from Sabbadius Custom Shop. Now the frequency response of the Tiny Vibe is great. It's got a lot of extension in the upper frequencies. There's not much cutoff there. You got some low end frequency cutoff, which is nice. And then you got a mid-range push, which is kind of indicative of the classic Univibe preamp sound. What does the modulation sweep of this one sound like? Well, it sounds great due to the new photocells that Nico's been using in these since November 2022. Because you get that upper extension in those frequencies, you get more sweep in the modulation in the upper frequencies as well, which sounds great. You get all that swooshiness. The lower frequencies have all that throb, everything that you want, and you get everything in between. When the effect comes on, the waveform is really kind of sine wave-ish. It's not very square wave-ish and abrupt. It's real smooth as it comes in and out. Now this one doesn't do the double pulse like the Funky Vibe. I kind of wish it did. That said, I still really like this one a lot. And this is the one that's on my pedal board now because it fits the size requirements and tonal requirements for me. Things to note about this one, it does use DC power, which is great. It has a side knob for the speed control. I'm not a big fan of the side knob thing, but I get why Nico did it. It's just the only way you can get that control in this small form. So I'm willing to work with it, but those are the things to note about the Tiny Vibe. I hope you guys enjoyed that nerd out session on Univibes. I'm glad that I'm done with Univibes for a while. I love the effect. I think it's awesome, but I don't want to see another Univibe for as long as I live. I want to say thanks to my dad. Dad, thanks for letting me borrow your Violet Vibe. That was super cool of you to offer that to me to make the video with. I think it sounds great and might be one of the best sounding ones I've ever heard. I don't like how big it is, but it does sound great. I promise to get it back to you soon if I don't sell it on Reroad for 150 bucks. So the rest of you guys, I want to say thanks for watching. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. That helps me out a lot. Thumbs up if you like the video. That would help me out a lot. I want to get these videos in front of more eyes, and when you guys do that, it helps. And please leave a comment down below because I want to know what you guys think. Which ones did you like? What did you like about each Univibe? Do you even care about Univibes? I'm all for hearing it. Let me know. Anyway, thanks for watching. Talk to you soon. Peace.